How are we doing? Are we set? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call a combined meeting of Northborough, Southborough, and the Regional School Committees to order. I think it's 5:31, and I think each committee will have to call their committee to order. So I'll start with Northborough.
I call the Northborough meeting to order at 5:31. We have one remote member, so we will be doing roll call votes for Northborough, and one member is on it.
And for the region?
I call the region to order at 5:31. We have 3 remote members. Joan Frank, can you hear me, Joan?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chris.
Kathleen Howland
I can hear you.
and Kathleen Plechko.
I can hear you.
All right, great, thank you.
And for Southborough?
I call Southborough's P&E School Committee to order at 5:31, and we have 3 members present and expecting a 4th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first on the agenda is public comment. I think people are pretty familiar with this at this point. And I'm just going to remind folks that each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. And we're going to try to, I intend to hold the total public comment to 15 minutes. We've got a long meeting tonight. And I'd also like to make a request. I see some folks that have been here before commenting on the same thing, especially if it's the calendar. And hopefully, if you've done this before, knowing that we only have 15 minutes, if some folks who have not had public comment opportunities before, I'd certainly like to give them a chance to make sure that they're heard, as opposed to maybe some of the same folks that have been here often. So with that said, let's go.
I'm happy to defer to others, but
Doesn't sound like you've got anybody trying to get in front of you, Mitch, so go for it.
well, thank you. Where would you like me to stand or sit?
Well, I think you just need a, does he need the mic?
No, I think it can pick you up here, Mitch.
Yeah,
so
I think it'll pick you up
you
here.
can stand.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much, everyone. Mitch Cohen, 12 Whitney Street in Northborough, speaking on behalf of only myself and my family and not in my other roles in town. Speaking obviously in support of the school calendar choice, and particularly I want to thank Superintendent Martineau for recommending the same option that at least I've been advocating for the past few years, which is a retention and expansion of recognition of religious and cultural holidays on the school calendar. I appreciate all the work that the calendar subcommittee has done. I know that it involves several people at this table and several people outside. I think you've done a great job. I know it's hard work, and I know it's not easy decisions, but obviously this is really exactly what I've been advocating for the past several years, along with several of the other people in this room, and hoping that the school committee will follow the superintendent's recommendation and that of so many members of the community. I also want to take, on a separate topic, thank everyone and the superintendent's office. Today is the 5th anniversary of the last day of school before shutdown. You, and all of you and your predecessors, did an amazing job leading the districts through just an impossibly to understand time. And we got to the other side of it, but everyone's thinking about, wow, it's been 5 years. I realized on the way here, it's been exactly 5 since the last day of school before things went a little crazy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Please.
All right. So my name is Amanda Jabot. I'm a Northborough resident, 80 Little Pond Road, and I'm also here to comment on the calendar. So dear members of the Northborough, Southborough, and Regional School Committees, I've emailed this letter to you prior, but I also felt compelled to be here this evening to read it in person. I hope you will consider it in the context of your discussion and as you make your decision regarding the 2025 to 2026 district calendar. While I do appreciate the effort that the calendar committee has put into developing and evaluating different calendar options, I really urge the committees to choose calendar option number 4 with no religious holidays for several reasons. First and foremost, the additional days out of school are disruptive to learning continuity for students and teachers. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this. As well as put a tremendous burden on families with working parents to either take time off work or find childcare, as workplaces do not observe these as holidays. We only observe the federal holidays. Not only is childcare often difficult to find for individual days, even with advance notice and planning, but the cost is often more than $100 per day per child. In my situation with 2 children, that amounts to either about $1,000 for the 5 days being considered in calendar option 1, or I have to use 5 days of my paid time off from my employer. This added expense on top of rising taxes due to the new athletic fields and fire station in Northborough, both of which were needed, no question, puts additional financial stress on a significant amount of families. The half-day options being considered in calendar options 2 and 3 are just as disruptive, as parents would still need to schedule time off work or find childcare for part of the day, which still amounts to an added expense, and even the half-day rates are not really reduced from full-day pricing, as camps and other options can't fill the remaining half of the day. If proceeding with any calendar option besides 4, I strongly feel the district must offer free childcare on the days school would be out for religious holidays for the families who do not observe those, in order to alleviate this burden and minimize the disruption for families with working parents, which I expect constitute the majority of families in the district due to the high cost of living in our town, as mentioned above. Second, the addition of religious observances into the calendar in options 1 and 3 extends the school year further into the summer. I really believe this is detrimental to the well-being of students and time with their families, as many plan vacations in the summer, and this limits the time they have to do so. In addition, many of the schools in the district do not have air conditioning, and the lengthening of the school year into the summer, further into the summer, puts students and staff at risk for being in excessive heat conditions for additional days. Lastly, this model to add religious holidays is unsustainable. There will likely be continued requests for additional observances in the future, and it will never be possible to add them all. I have not yet seen a process or a decision tree for how future religious holiday requests will be evaluated, and it would not be prudent to adopt calendar options 1, 2, or 3 without this process approved and ready to be implemented. Additionally, it doesn't seem appropriate that the district and the school committees, via approval of the calendar, are able to decide which religious holidays are major and should be included and which ones are minor and will be excluded. In my opinion, this really borders on discrimination, and the district would be overstepping its bounds and beginning to tread in a very gray area that blurs the line between separation of church and state. This opens up the door to costly legal challenges and diversion of resources unnecessarily. And although the intent is to be inclusive and equitable, which I really do support, all calendar options besides option 4 with no religious observances would ironically achieve exactly the opposite. It's as simple as this. If you can't observe all religious holidays, which really won't be possible, do not observe any. That is fair, period. Give parents, not the district, the discretion to decide what is significant in their culture and religious beliefs, and allow their children to take an excused absence for religious observances and make up any homework or tests, etc., as reasonably feasible. I, as a practicing Christian, fully support that Good Friday not be a scheduled day off of school, and that I, as a parent, should have the authority to make the decision to keep my children home to observe that day or not.
I'm sorry, you already just about wrapped up?
Yep, I got one more paragraph.
Okay.
Give me 30 seconds.
You fooled me when you said there was one more thing and then went on a little bit longer. Go ahead.
I don't expect that this should interfere with the learning of other students in the district who do not share the same religious belief as I do. And this consideration for others represents true inclusion and would only be achieved if implementing calendar option 4. So in conclusion, I strongly believe that a calendar with no religious observances is the fairest and most equitable selection for the district going forward. It's the most sustainable option and puts the least amount of collective financial and scheduling burden on families. And it will place the decision around observance of significant days solely in the hands of parents, where it should be. I really urge you to choose the well-being of families over an ineffective and, quite frankly, in my opinion, backwards attempt at being inclusive. Calendar options 1, 2, and 3 are all a step in the wrong direction from which it will be difficult to turn back. Please approve calendar option 4. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. All right, thank you very much. We will, am I allowed to make a public comment, not in response? I guess so.
You're the chair.
So, I have a public comment, and it's not actually Mitch reminded me of this, and I think I really knew it, which was the 50th-year anniversary of COVID. And I know that there were some folks here that were on school committees at the time. Some folks weren't. I still remember looking out at that infamous combined Zoom meeting where I think there were 400 or 500 people out there, listening to the kind of combined school committees discuss options, in person, remote, hybrid. And I think most of us knew at that point in time, having seen some of the surveys that the communities, both Northborough and Southborough, were pretty much split, almost a third. So we knew going into that meeting that frankly there were going to be 2/3 of the people end up, no matter what we did, that weren't going to be happy with our choice. Nonetheless, we moved forward for those folks that were on the committees that were operating during that period, for community members, parents, for faculty, for the administration. It was a challenging time, and I'm glad it's behind us. And Mitch, thank you for reminding me that this is the anniversary, and we're moving forward. So I think I used 3 minutes, did I? All right, good. Okay, next is the superintendent's 2024-2025 evaluation process and timeline.
Sure, so
Turn that over
it
to
is
you.
hard to believe it's been 5 years, and it's also hard to believe that it's March 12th in this academic year. So just kind of a brief overview of the next steps in the superintendent's evaluation process. So as you are aware, it's a 5-step process, which began with a self-assessment, analysis of goals and goal setting. And over the past many months, I've been working on implementation of the plan. The next phase of the process, which actually begins this evening, is data collection on my part to present to the committee as evidence to support progress toward the goals. So what I will be doing is collecting the data, organizing it, and presenting that to the committee. I plan on sending that out on May 9th. So you'll get the data as well as the form that Cheryl creates every year that provides an opportunity for you to give feedback on each of the goal areas and then a rating. On June 9th, the chairs will come together, synthesize that information, and then present me with a draft evaluation, which will then be presented on June 16th at the combined school committee meeting in June. So that is the process. Next milestone date is actually May 9th, where you can expect the Google form and the evaluation data from me. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions at this time? We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the calendar advisory working group, the school calendar recommendations.
Sure. So as the committee is aware, key responsibility of the school committee is to approve each year the committee to consider. And really the school committee's responsibility is to schedule 105 academic days. First, thinking about meeting contractual obligations when school starts, and the school year can't go beyond June 30th. So those are the parameters. Every calendar that the school committee brings forth every year. I also want to commend the working group for its thoughtful and thorough approach. There were many meetings, many difficult conversations and discussions, and the civil discourse was of respect and perspective-taking. And then again, it's important to note that no calendar is perfect. Of the 4 calendars, there are flaws in each one. But I do believe calendar 1 best aligns with the district priorities.
Okay, questions from anyone? Or comments from anyone about what's in your packet, the calendars, the work we've done up until this point?
I think, yeah, I do.
Fire?
Recognizes all religious holidays equally. Is that what this does?
All,
What are you asking?
recognizes these listed.
No, this says recognizes all religious holidays equally.
Was that in relation to, so one of the calendars had half days for some religious observances and full days for others? So that comment may have been in regards to all of those 5 holidays, recognizing them all as full days instead of some half and some full.
Okay, and when we're considering, can somebody list for me all religions being considered?
Can you clarify the comment?
What are all the religions that we're going to include holidays for?
Just the ones, those 5.
So not all religions.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else have an opinion?
Well, I'm not, well,
That it could just be clarified by saying listed below, that's what Lauren was saying.
is your point that it shouldn't say all because it doesn't deal with all religion? The intention was certainly to talk about those religious holidays that were there, that it was treating them all equally in that particular, I guess, sentence, okay? So as long as it's, is that clear?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody then articulate to me what the decision-making process for new religious holiday requests is.
What the what?
What is the process for new requests for holiday observances?
That was not established through this calendar.
So we have no process.
So it's a decision of the school committee annually to consider any changes to the school calendar, including adding other religious observances.
And those requests can come from.
That would be, unless there's a policy that states it, it would just come on an annual basis. Unless the school committee creates a policy in having, an added, I don't want to say a holiday or cultural event, added, that would be the only way to go forward after that.
And are we comfortable with that?
Kelly, can you read? So
Right now, we don't have any policy for doing it. So right now, annually, we decide on what the calendar is going to be. This past 2, 3, 4 years, we've been working on, are we going to add more? Are we going to take away? We tried the wellness days, we tried all that stuff. So now where we're at is we have a recommended calendar for adding in more holidays or subtracting. So the recommendation right now on the table is to add in more holidays. And these holidays have come up to us by community members
that's the answer.
reaching out to us and advocating for themselves and their people. So that's what we have so far, is just people coming and advocating, and then that's when we did it. Going forward, if we think that it's gonna become a problem or whatever, to every year somebody's gonna want more and more, then the only way to regulate it is by creating a policy in which it would establish guidelines and criteria for adding it to the calendar.
Yeah, and the answer is, again, it comes from the community. In other words, the community will, send an email, maybe speak to a school committee member. It can come from school committee members. It can come from really anyone. And there's an annual decision on what the calendar is going to be. Now, from a practical standpoint, and I think I may have mentioned this at the last combined meeting, one of the things that we'd like to find out as a group of committees is, how's it working out? You know, I mean, because we'll each vote something, and we'll end up with a calendar. And in some cases, you don't really know for sure how something is going to work out in the end. It can take, clearly, it takes more than a year to sometimes find out, okay, how something is working. So the fact that the school committees can vote a calendar every year and doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to evaluate different calendars every year. It may take, well, it will take. I happen to think it's going to take more than a year to actually measure how whatever decision is made tonight actually works for the communities. Anyway, Sean.
Yes, sir. I was going to talk about policy, but that's at the level of the committees also to request a policy review if we feel we need that. But my first, what I was going to try to clarify is we've been presented two years worth of calendars, and so are we, looking at the point about multi-years to see how it's working? Are we looking to approve 2 calendars, 2 years worth at this time?
So the reason why you see more than 1 year is because next year, some holidays fall on the weekends. And so we wanted, as the calendar expiration committee, we wanted to know, okay, so yeah, it doesn't really affect how many days that much next year, but what does it look like in future years? So that's why they were built out that way. I think it's, again, the will of the committee, how we want to vote it. Do we want to vote it and have it be a vote of 2 years? I feel like annually is the best way to do it, just because our committees change annually, potentially with elections. So I would feel bad if we vote 2 years out and then it's a different committee 2 years later, and then really make our decisions.
Please.
I wouldn't mind voting 2 years at a time for some stability and some traction and the ability to get some feedback. But again, I'm not making a motion or anything, but I think a committee has worked hard on all of this, and it would be good to put some motions and continuity in place, voting for 2 years at a time.
Let me just ask a procedural question. I think the plan was going to be, does the policy say that there will be an annual vote of the school committees?
It's required by Mass General Law.
So, we can vote something for 2 years, but we have to vote again next year anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen 3 years done at a time, but I'm just putting that out there as an option.
And certainly, and by the way, your point, which is one of the things that, again, we discussed at the last meeting of the years are different. So to try to measure the effectiveness of a calendar against the way that the vacation days and holidays lay out, it's really hard to do that, in a single year. But nonetheless, I guess, because of the state law, we have to vote something every year, so you can vote the same thing again or change it.
I think the hope too is that, due to our terms, right, as elected officials, you're here for 2 years, and so there's going to be some overlap. So let's say like 70-80% of the community, the combined committee will be here again next year. So you'll have that, you'll be able to reflect last year and one going forward.
Kathleen Howland.
Is there remote?
Yes. Kathleen?
Thank you for this and for the thoughtful discussion as well as the heavy lifting of the committee. One of the questions I had pursuant to our neighbor testifying and reading her letter, which I had already read, was my inquiry as to why Good Friday is still included, since the winter break is really built over Christmas, and that represents that Christian holiday, and Good Friday tends to be more of a Catholic subset of the Christian holiday. And as noted, it could be left up to the parents for that one. And in my inquiry, many people are not as committed to that holiday. It does not have the gravitas that it once did. And I'm wondering why to continue including it. And thank you for taking the question.
Yes, Kelly?
So the idea was, by creating the calendar one, was we didn't want to take away existing holidays from any religion. We wanted to be inclusive of it. So that's why, by taking away that one, it then goes with, I mean, there are
People are willing to give it up, though. That, I can see, as a general policy, not wanting to take away anything that's there. But if we are to be responsive to the way things are versus the way things have been, I'm wondering about pursuing this still.
There were actually people that were on the committee who observed Good Friday in the church for the majority of the day. So even though not every Catholic does it, there are still some Catholics who do it. So who are we to then decide to take something away? I think that was kind of like the idea of
I think we are deciding, and, I think that it bears looking at if we had some sort of a better understanding to make room for our Muslim brothers and sisters and to ensure that our Jewish brothers and sisters have what they need. It seems like an overplay in one direction, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I don't think, if I could maybe rephrase Kelly's comment, who are we to take something away? I think that my view, or the way I looked at it, was we recognize it's always harder to take something away that exists. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't and couldn't do it, because sometimes, when you need to move forward, and that could happen. But I think we did say the fact that there's something in existence today that kind of gave a little emphasis to that versus choices that were all new. But
I didn't mean who are we, I meant who are we, the subcommittee.
well,
That's what I was saying. When I said who are we to decide, because Kevin was saying that
No, I know.
we are deciding, I wasn't saying that who are we to, I was saying that's where that holiday was.
it was discussed. And
It was discussed that the committee did not, the subgroup, working group, did not feel comfortable taking away one of the holidays that were already in existence. One out of, to add other.
out of that
ones and take
particular
them.
out of that particular option,
Yes.
because there's some options that
Take
remove
all of
of
it, yes.
or change the structure of how a holiday would be observed, whether it be a full day or part of a day. Yes, sir.
So, before I make some general comments for the committee to consider, I just want to thank those people in the audience that have come. We received a lot of community feedback regarding the calendars, and as chairs of the committees, we forwarded that information to the remainder of the members. And I appreciate your commitment to making sure that you're able to have your families not be concerned about what school might happen on certain religious holidays. That being said, religion is a deeply, deeply personal experience. And it kind of comes back to Kathleen's point a little bit of, this day's, she didn't say it like this, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but this day was considered holy, and now it's not necessarily considered as holy anymore. So people don't necessarily take this day off versus this day off. And I have an issue as a public body trying to say that This particular religious observance is valued in our community, so we're going to offer this day off. And for whatever reason, this other religious holiday may or may not be of value, and we are not going to take this day off. And because religion is such a deeply personal issue, and we have a religious observance policy that allows for individuals to have excused absences and allows for students to make up any work that might potentially be missed. And that policy encourages, or actually should be requiring, teachers to not assign tests and heavy materials on those days. I'm really not in favor of adding, quite frankly, I'm not in favor of adding days. I'm in favor of having a secular calendar and effectively following what the state and federal governments have said are holidays that we are.
It's a Christian holiday. It's a Christian calendar, not secular. It's Christian.
I'm not going to engage in a debate. We don't set the state and federal calendar, and without engaging in a debate, I agree that that holiday is baked into the state and federal calendar. And I think that we need to recognize that there should be a separation of church and state. And we are a public school. And I'm uncomfortable passing judgment on religious holidays. And I think it would be very, very difficult to create a policy, an objective style policy to determine which holidays, and I hate using this terminology, which holidays the district is going to consider valid and which holidays the district is not going to consider valid. It just seems like a very odd position for us to be in. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my general comments.
May I make a
Sure.
So I think the dialogue that we're listening to here just supports what we already know, that any decision that gets made tonight will be overwhelming to some of the people. That all of which have expressed opinions on all 4 calendars. And I think, for me, my opinion, I support calendar 1. Where that comes from is the feedback that we received as part of the calendar committee. The overwhelming majority seems to suggest support for calendar 1. We've seen a lot of feedback from the community in support of all 4, and the majority is in favor of calendar 1. The folks that are calendar 1, the folks that are coming here speaking are predominantly in favor of calendar 1. And while there is no perfect calendar, I do think the process has been, unless someone tells me differently, the process has been very open. As the calendar groups were formed, I believe that was sent out to, unless I'm mistaken, I think a lot of folks within the community, particularly those involved in schools, had an opportunity to participate if they wanted to. Because of the openness in which we asked folks to participate in the calendar group, we got feedback from folks within our community that have particular needs within particular dates. They expressed the importance and significance of certain religious holidays. So we are being responsive to the folks in our community at this point in time. As we start down the process of adding more religious holidays, we may hear from more religious communities, and then that will, again, we'll have to evaluate how do we meet their needs. Yes, I believe I understand the significance of separation of church and state. We are a public school, but we are here to serve the residents of our communities. If our residents of our communities are suggesting they want to observe religious holidays, we need to find a way to support them in that. For anyone that feels differently than that, you're 100% right also. No one is 100% right in this dialogue, but for me, I support calendar 1. I don't know the frame in which we're discussing this at the moment, how we proceed. If I could make a motion to approve calendar 1 as recommended by the school committee, maybe by the superintendent, maybe we can solicit feedback as to where everybody is right now. I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
Are we going to consider that a motion from the region?
It has to be.
Well, that's fine, just.
You can motion and then we can have a discussion between it,
All
so.
right, so I would move to approve calendar 1 as proposed by the superintendent.
Do I have a second from the region? Second from Paul.
And each committee will have to vote on their own motions, I think. So, but it's nothing wrong with open discussion on the region's motion.
Is there any other that wants to make the motion also, or no?
For Northborough. Second.
Northborough motion by Lauren and seconded by Kristen. So the same motion to approve calendar 1 option as recommended by the superintendent.
There's hands up online.
Who's online?
Kathleen Pleshko.
Kathleen?
Both Kathleen.
I'm not raising my hand to move the motions or anything. It was just a comment.
Go ahead.
So I can wait and see if all 3 committees move to
Is there?
calendar 1.
All right, so each committee has moved this motion and seconded it. So continue with discussion.
Do you want to take the online ones first?
Kathleen Pleshko.
Okay, hi. Thank you all also very much for all the input that we've gotten from everybody, parents, teachers, administration, and all of the people in all of the, just all of our community members from all different walks of life. I've been doing this for a really long time. I've been on every calendar committee that I think there's been. And the reason that we started this was actually because there was so much disruption in the continuity of the school year that even parents were up in arms because their kids weren't going to school for more than 4 days for the first 7 weeks of school or whatever it was back in ancient years. So I've been listening to these conversations for a really long time and have heard, I think, every aspect of everyone's opinion. I usually always support the superintendent when he or she makes a recommendation. In fact, I've been doing this through 3 superintendents. But this time I'm going to have to differ because my opinion has always been kind of all or nothing. We really need to be equal in our treatment of just people. And either we give every religion in the district equal consideration or we don't give any of them preferential treatment. So I feel like a compromise calendar sort of puts me personally in a very uncomfortable position of feeling like I'm determining which religion is more deserving than another. So that leaves calendar 1 or 4. And the problem I have with calendar 1 is manifold, much of which we've discussed already. The disruption in the continuity of the learning, the extending the school year to like late June, which has its issues, the ever increasing issue that we're starting to hear from our constituents with childcare and working parents. And there's no process for adding another religion request, which I also find kind of disturbing. So with calendar 4, I am fully, and I hope our policy reflects this, in favor of if you have a religious holiday, take the holiday. Take it off without impunity. And we probably do have some work to do to make sure that that happens. But this conversation is so draining to everybody, our community, our administration, our schools, that we really need to stop having it every single solitary year. So, and that's another thing that calendar 4 accomplishes. So I will be voting for calendar 4. And that's just my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Kathleen Howland.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Kathleen Howland.
Yes, thank you. I had one question. In the superintendent's memo, there was a summary of opinions by the teachers for whom is an important constituency here. but I did not see any particular voting by them for this and was curious about what their preferences are.
Yes, so I can answer that. So we had 59 respondents to feedback on the 4 calendars. There were 2 opportunities for feedback. I also worked closely with the associations and shared the calendar and what work was happening. Of the 59 respondents, and I did summarize that in the memo, characterized as, there were some themes. One was continuity. One was inclusivity. So for every comment, there was an equal and opposite comment supporting the other side. I would say 59 respondents out of 900 employees isn't a great sample of the larger faculty and staff. But there was no clear, we support this calendar over, another calendar for the 59 people who participated in giving feedback. I'll also comment, to me, it's the school committee's responsibility for scheduling 180 days. That is your role and your responsibility. You have goalposts. You have August 25th, which is a contractual obligation. School cannot start before that. And you have June 30th, which the 180 days needs to be concluded. The school committee's job is not to determine, should we have this religious observance off or that, but how to best maximize attendance over those 180 days. If you're scheduling a day where you know that a certain aspect of students are not going to be able to attend or participate in a day, and you have flexibility within those goalposts, I think that's a consideration that the school committee needs to make. If you look at the calendars, the 180 days, all 4 calendars, the 180 days fit. And you still have room to extend to June 30th. We cannot put undue restraints on a tight schedule as it is based on Mass General Law when we can have 180 days scheduled and say, well, June doesn't count. So any day in June isn't a good day. Therefore, we can't have any school in June. One could make the same argument about August. So one of the considerations I would ask you is not to think about which observance or which one should or not, but how can you best schedule the 180 days that allows the most number of students to participate in those 180 days without having to make a difficult choice around, for example, observing their religion or attending their academics. 2, which I would share, are probably very important and highly valued in many of our families. So I think that's another way to look at it.
Chris?
So I very much understand, actually, first I should start with thank you to everyone in the audience and who emailed us and all the feedback we've gotten. And I understand both from the community feedback and also members of the committee who look at calendar 4 and think that's the fairest option. I understand what you're saying. But there's a couple of things throughout this whole process that have stuck with me. One was a public comment made another day about thinking about the message that we send when we normally have 3 religious holidays, and then when another is asked for, we say, no, never mind, that's too much, and take them all away. And that's a very negative sentiment, I think, to then send to the community at large about what type of community do we want to be, what do we want to show people we are. And adding holidays would be preferable, in my opinion, in that. Another comment that was made in a previous meeting, I think by Rush actually, that stuck with me was that having 2 days off a year is not going to be a huge detrimental thing in the grand scheme of things. In fact, I look at my middle schooler now and I think she could really use a day, even though in our family, we're Roman Catholic, we celebrate Good Friday and do go to church, etc., but we don't celebrate, for example, New Year Eve, but that doesn't mean she won't benefit either from having a calendar that's more inclusive and having, a day off as well. It's It's also disruptive, I think, in the classroom when you have some students missing and now the teacher has to figure out who's going to make up what on what schedule, and that disrupts the time she can spend with the other students, staying on task, keeping all the students together. As Fergus was saying, I think it's much more consistent. It's better for learning. I know it drives me nuts as a professor when I have this student out for that and that student out, and I got to schedule makeup exams and do all this other stuff, and it disrupts what I'm trying to do with my other students. And the last thing I will say is one thing that bothers me a lot and always has is when in the school system in particular, we try to make things equal by erasing things. We try to say, nope, we're not going to talk about that because not everybody celebrates that, so we're going to have, just as a random example, maybe orange leaves and celebrate fall instead of Halloween, right? Or we're going to talk about just snowflakes, not Christmas and Hanukkah and all those other things. I much prefer that we bring it all in and teach students about everything, not try and, okay, we're going to be equal by pretending all of it doesn't exist, or saying you make your decision, the school's not going to recognize any of these holidays, or any of these, cultural norms that other people might celebrate. I much prefer when we bring them into the schools and say, hey, these are things that other people do that you might not see at home. I think calendar one is one way in which we can do that, show respect to everybody in the community, be able to be more inclusive, as well as really not having a huge impact on the calendar. I think 2 days, when kids say 2 days a year when kids are in school, 180 days is not a huge negative impact.
John, did you have a hand in Paul? Sorry, Paul.
I agree with everything you just said, and well, first I want to thank the folks on the committee. I've also served on these calendar committees in the past, and I know it's a lot of work, a lot of input to consider all the time. So I appreciate all of your participation in that. I also hear from folks who don't like calendar one. I am in support of calendar one. I get all the action don't like it. This is one of the reasons we do this ahead of time, so we have time to plan. There is ample time. I want to address the issue of dealing with additional requests for holidays as they crop up. I've been around quite a while, but it's been a while, something like 13 years. This is the first time we're adding holidays in all that time. So 2 holidays in 13 years, I think it's something we can deal with.
Well, 3 days currently with the calendar the way it is. That's the calendar changes.
The other thing is, Chris, I get how you're uncomfortable with some of this. I guess I'm uncomfortable with making students uncomfortable having to choose when they go to school and give them a religious holiday. And I'm also uncomfortable with making folks with different religions feel that's value or relevant here in this district. So that's why I'm totally in support of calendar one.
Jen.
Joan, and then Joan. Joan Frank.
Okay, Jen.
I just want to say a few things. So I'm actually pretty torn between 1 and 4. Initially, I had been, I've been also involved in this for many years, more supportive of calendar 4. I don't think either one is particularly equitable, and I think that's the equity issue is for me pretty important. Many years ago, when I first started looking at this, I pulled all of the major religious holidays and I counted them, and it's close to a month of extra holiday. I pulled that from university and school websites that celebrated that. So I do have concern that we are selecting, yes, these are some of the major religious holidays, and what's going to happen, and we've talked consistently about how our community is becoming more diverse along a range of a lot of normative issues. So I definitely have concerns about that. I think calendar 4 is also not equitable because yes, we remove them all, but Christmas is still part of that. So even though it's not directly under our control, to me, there's an issue there. I also wanted to say, I've been thinking about this in the context too of how we prepare our children for what happens after school and how they operate at work and in the real world and not real world, but outside of the school community. And that's the celebration of those holidays is not something that's necessarily celebrated across. So kids are going to have to at some point manages. However, I think I am leaning more towards one for a few reasons. I think the reasons that Matt mentioned is that we are here to represent our community, that we've gotten pretty clear communication from our communities, that calendar one is the preferred option. Again, I'm a little bit concerned about what happens, that this is not completely equitable and that we're making decisions here by the most vocal folks who come. And that the people who maybe are underrepresented, they're not the folks who are coming. And so that for me is a concern because, like I said, I tabulated all of these major religions and, you know, if we start to include more and more, are we gonna end up in the place where we are gonna be close to the limit and how disruptive that may be? So I am concerned about that. But I am, like I said, I think for the reason that Matt mentioned, I'm leaning a little bit more towards calendar one. And just finally, I think we're at a time sociopolitically right now where it's potentially problematic to send a because a lot of these religious holidays also have cultural meaning for our families, and to remove those things I think is problematic, particularly now when a lot of things are being removed from people. So that's the second reason why I'm leaning more toward calendar.
Joan.
Hi, thank you very much for the time. I would also like to echo all the other sentiments that have been mentioned, to thank all the people who have sent in emails, who have attended numerous through the years, public comment section about the calendar. This is a really hard decision to make, and like Jen, I am between 1 and 4. As an educator, of course, I would go for 4 for the consistency in education. Number 1, I would go for because it does go with the values that we have. Besides having the values that we have, school is a learning situation for children and staff. I guess I wish when I was growing up that I had more of an opportunity to learn about the other religions and their diversity and their celebrations. I know as a school committee, we've been invited to a celebration I did attend it several years ago, and it was very much of a learning experience. I always think that learning never ends. It can happen in the classroom, it could happen talking to a person and learning about their differences. And I have a question for Greg on calendar number 4. Greg, when you say that the positive effect is that families and staff could take personal leave as needed, we have personal days for teachers. If a teacher would take a personal day for a religious holiday, is that counted against the personal days, or do we provide the staff with a religious personal day if they want to take a half day or a full day?
Yeah, there is a religious clause in the contract that allows an employee to take, an observance day if requested. So that is allowable.
It doesn't count towards
it's
not there. It's an additional.
Correct, without any using of personal time or other time.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification on that. And, my feeling is on calendar number 1 is I got to take my retired educator hat off and think about the most important thing for our community. We're very much of a diverse community. Education is not perfect, and the decisions that we all make are not perfect. We're not perfect human beings. And even if we would say that there would be no testing, there's no homework, something always slips through the crack. And if it affects 1 student or 2 students, sometimes that's 1 or 2 too many. And I worry about the effective mode of students when they have to, if they should have a project that's due and know that they have that in their mind and they have to be worrying about that and saying, okay, when's dinner going to be over, or when's the religious ceremony because the observance because I have to go and do this project for tomorrow. But I would like to thank everybody on the committee for all your very thoughtful comments, and look forward to making a good decision for the next year. Thank you.
Norm, please.
So I think a couple things that stick out in my mind when I'm thinking about calendar 1 is how we can, send a message to our students and faculty, how their cultural backgrounds are important to our school community. And I think I mentioned this last meeting, but we did talk about, this being an opportunity for potentially some hiring of faculty and staff who observe those holidays, who would then be potentially interested in our district. If you look at our classrooms, especially our younger students, they're wonderfully diverse. So for them to be able to see themselves in the teaching staff, I think that would be remarkable. Also just sort of that juggle between, trying to juggle your academic requirements while trying to observe a holiday. I can just think myself celebrating Christmas if I had to think about, all my students, all my classmates are in school right now, and I'm trying to just fully engage in my celebration, the stress that could add to students. And then, so we will be talking about the religious observance policy a little bit later. So we did try to make that more robust, and while it's maybe not the perfect solution, hopefully it gives a little bit of guidance for students who celebrate holidays that are not included in calendar one, for how to sort of manage that balance between celebrating and going about their academic work. A couple concerns that were brought up about calendar one are extremely valid. So, the child care solution, we need better child care solutions, and not just for our religious and cultural observances, but for conferences, for half days, for professional days. Especially because this day and age, in a two-parent household, most two-parent households have two working parents. So that's something we need to discuss, regardless of where we go with our calendar, for sure. The continuity of learning, so Greg presented some interesting data in our December meeting, and it was just one set of data, but the data did show that there really was no dramatic or drastic change in learning outcomes, positively or negatively, with added holidays. So I did just want to point that out. And then in our working group, teachers did bring forth the heat in buildings, particularly in June, which is an issue. So our capital improvement plans need to include cooling systems. I know that I think the Board of Selectmen, for helping us with Malcolm Middle School, the ARPA funds, that was one step. We have a lot more buildings in our district. But I remember 2 years ago, I was very pregnant at the time, so maybe that was part of it, but it was the week before April vacation. I was going to have my baby during April vacation. He held on a little bit longer. And I remember it was so hot in my building. I don't work in Northborough, but in my school building, it was so hot in April because it was like a 78-degree day. The buildings were hot. So climate change is happening. I'm teaching about it right now. And we as a district do need to respond to that. So regardless of where we go, heat is going to be an issue. Childcare is going to be an issue, so those are things we need to consider. But I am in support of calendar one.
Anyone else? Kelly?
I'm so conflicted. I almost wish that we started with a motion for calendar 4 for people to rule it out versus 1, because I do support calendar 1, but I would prefer, I think, calendar 4 for the continuity of learning and things like that. So I'm personally very conflicted of where to go.
You have a chance to make that motion.
They made the motion.
But we can't have two on the floor at the same time.
It's just, there's, as I said, there's no perfect calendar for anybody. We are going to be disappointing a large group of people, no matter which one we decide.
We've been there,
And
done that.
I guess the only way to know how many we decide, how many we upset is by making a calendar and see how much, kickback we end up getting from it, like disappointing people. Like, I don't know what else, I don't know how this, like, yeah.
Sean?
Just a question, are professional development dates baked in this calendar? I don't think I.
No.
Yes.
They are.
The future years too, or just the first?
Yes.
Yeah, they're in there.
Okay.
One is before school starts, and then like next year, for example, the full district PD day is in March.
Conferences are not.
Yeah, conferences are not.
Conferences are not, those are.
They used to be.
They're used to.
Westminster area, almost. But they were scheduled after the calendar, so that led to some confusion. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. Molly?
Without rehashing a lot of similar comments, I think what Matt shared was very closely aligned with where I am, and Lauren, thanks for adding those extra points. I think that after a decade, or it's been two that I'm hearing, it's time to kind of take a step in the direction that's being proposed. And I was part of that calendar group, and I just want to reassure people that there was so much discussion and analysis. The types of participants were, it was not just a faith-based discussion. We looked at continuity, we looked at the psychology, we looked at comparative analysis across districts. I mean, it was such a thoughtful process. This is not just, let's try something and see what works. It's also not like, you know, based on the loudest voices or the most frequent voices. It's been years and years of information that was looked at. I think that the terms that at an elementary level they use a lot are growth mindset and forward thinking, and the calendar that was suggested for us to you know, move forward with, I think allows us to do that. For those that are listening or watching, no one on our calendar working group is had the intention or implication to say what is valid or invalid. Just as a participant, I can tell you that for the folks that were there, that was not the case. So I just wanted to share that. So that was really kind of around, very similar to some of the comments shared, but I want to offer a different perspective, and that's kind of me speaking to the community to say that we need the community to support the vote that's made tonight, and especially when it comes to childcare and creating solutions for the days that are off, the ones that we have today, the ones that we will have next year. And so I really kind of like want to reach out to the community, like that we have, in Southborough, we have a group called SOS, Northborough might have a group called PTOs, but also there are entrepreneurs, you know, then we have, and yes, I know that you say, well, school system, you provide us with something. I'm going to flip that back and say, community, let's work together and come up with ways that for families that have 1 through 3, 5 children can have your support in making sure that on the days off, when needed, you know, what are the options there? Because I think that's another misconception, that those things are not considered. It is. People on the working groups, they have children there in the school system, or they are the grandparents, and so they end up with doing the support work. So that's just kind of one voice that I wanted to add to the mix tonight. It's like the community is asking us for a decision, but I'm also asking them to help us in whatever we come up with tonight. That's it.
Jen?
I just have a quick follow-up question. Is there, and this is, I guess, to Greg, is there a way, because I do think, like, if we're gonna vote in support of calendar one,
Or not?
or, yeah, but I'm saying if we do, like I say, if our vote is we're gonna go with calendar one, I think it ultimately is really up to us to think, to make sure that there is that consideration of child, and I know that the task force has thought about that, but Greg, are there ways in which we can potentially do something, like whether it's a non-content curriculum, I don't know, like, are there options that would make that concern less of a concern, because ultimately, I think it's up to, if we're gonna make this decision, which is gonna be disruptive to quite a few families, we have to do something, I think, to mitigate the disruption that potentially would happen.
So calendar one for next year, where the observances fall, would be an additional 2 days for families. So I think, we have SCDP, which is a district-sponsored program. Next year we'll have NEDP. So there are opportunities that we can look at to try to help mitigate any hardships families face with the calendar. I would share that calendar 4 also can present a hardship when school gets out in early June, finding childcare camps. Also, the problem isn't different. It's just spread across a different calendar. But I think we can look at different solutions to make sure that for working families, there are solutions that they can turn to that are affordable.
Kristen?
Add to that too, that's been a conversation in the wellness committee, which I'm liaison for, so they've been talking about, we work with recreation, we work with different entrepreneurs in the community, and have been having this conversation about the days off, especially around the wellness days or half days, but also the potential to days off from school, so that there will be other options for parents. And I feel like Molly said earlier, and I've been with parents, they're like, wait, why is that a half day? And I vote on the calendar, so it's busy parent with 4 kids. I've done that, but so I totally understand that. But those are conversations that are going on in other communities and communities as well.
Okay, well, let me just add a couple of minutes for myself. I was on the committee. I think I actually made all the meetings. I can't remember that entirely. I have found myself agreeing with, I think Jen's previous comment more or less described the way, that feeling. And some others also who were torn between calendar 1 and calendar 4. I think I'm just going to make 2 comments about that. I think being on the committee, even though it was time consuming, it provided those folks on the committee with some benefits that we can't share out to everyone, because it was really an advantage to hear the different ideas and thoughts and feelings on these holidays in a more granular sense. I mean, we can try to summarize, okay, and there's some graphs here that do summarize it, but we have an advantage in being able to hear a lot of different opinions and comments that were made over time. I have a procedural question. If all the committees don't vote for this calendar, what is the next step tonight? For example, if one committee does not support calendar 1 in the vote, because they've been moved and seconded, what would happen?
So the school committee policies in each committee states that the school calendar needs to be approved by May 1st. So one option is, if there is a committee that does not support whatever calendar, then you can put it back on the calendar working group to go back and create some new versions for consideration. I think it's important to have a unified calendar across the 3 districts.
So it's not policy-wise impossible. One committee can't veto this basically by voting it down, even though it's very impractical, I think, for a lot of reasons. You have parents with kids in different school districts, and you have all kinds of things, okay. But it is policy-wise.
Policy states you have to have an approved calendar by May 1st.
And the committees do not actually have to have the same calendar, even though I think it'd be foolish not to, right? But, or am I wrong?
There's no law that says
No policy.
there's no law that says you have to have a unified calendar across districts. So you're right.
Okay.
Southborough and
Greg has no more hair.
I'll be getting closer. Okay.
So we would be administering, the leadership team in schools could, essentially, we could administer 3 different school calendars.
I understand.
Have you seen the transportation bill? Have you seen the transportation bills?
I feel for Kelly's comment that it's too bad we didn't get calendar 4 out there first. I'm not sure what would have happened. I've done in other situations, like a town meeting once where I did a straw vote, and just curiosity, how many people would have liked to see that. It doesn't count, but I'm not sure that's a fair thing to do based on procedure.
I think if people want to hear
However,
calendar 4, then Matt would need to amend or withdraw his motion.
Well, okay, but.
And then someone would have to put a new motion on.
But I'm not, my straw vote's still a straw vote. Paul?
Or the vote fails, and then we consider a different calendar. I do think we'll get to the same place.
I'm sorry?
I do think we will get to the same place.
I think.
Looking around the table, we are at a point, I think people will vote in favor of one if they would vote yes, or, they would vote one, they'll vote yes. If they want calendar 4, they'll vote no.
I don't agree with that statement.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
I don't agree with that statement because I do support one, I'm not against one, but I'm in favor of 4, which
Okay,
also.
you're fair enough.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I could support both of them.
I just don't know how that we reach a decision.
Well, it would depend on, like, because if I'm like the only one, like, say we have a member, we have 5 people on our committee, say 2 people want 4 and 3 don't, so then that's off the table, versus if that was voted first, but if it's voted the other way, it might not.
You'll never get there.
Could you make a motion that is to vote for either option 1 or option 4?
Because not with the motion, not with the current motions on the floor. I mean, we'd have to withdraw.
But is that a better option than doing it this way?
Yeah, we'd have to withdraw the motions and put different motions on the floor. Now, let me just.
Can we move the vote?
Yeah.
I'd like to move the vote.
When you say move the vote.
That means we have to vote on it now.
Problem is,
We have to vote on moving the vote.
yeah, sadly, as the chair, I can continue to talk a little bit, okay, because I can accept that or not. So let me make.
No, you have to accept it. It's been motioned and seconded. You have to move, we have to vote on moving the vote now, because that's been established now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, fire me then.
No, I know, I did the thing, so because there's a motion.
I think I have not an opinion, but a fact about what's in your packets, which other people who haven't seen the packets haven't had a chance to look at. And I'd like to take 60 seconds and share that, if you'll allow me.
I allow it.
Okay, thank you. So there were basically 3 choices for the people on the committee. One was, I vote for this. This is my first choice. The other one was, this isn't my first choice, but I would agree to it. And the third one was, I'm not voting for this. So if you take a look at the graphs, the only graph that is substantially, this is my first choice, happens to be option 1. 75% of the committee said this is my first choice.
At a point in time.
This is my first choice at the point in time that the committee was asked to make its choice. I mean, that's all you can do. So the second most first choice votes was option 4. And it had 12.5%. So there's a and the other two choices weren't really on the charts almost as far as that. So, yes, some of the other options were not my first choice, but I'll agree to it. But option one, and I'm still, I myself, I can't use an opinion here, so I wouldn't. Option one was the one that statistically, by far, people had that as their first choice compared to any other options in their first choices. So I'm done.
Thank you.
So do we need this vote, or should we take a vote?
We need it because it's been moved, it's been motioned and seconded.
If there's no more comments, we can just vote, right? What's the point of having a vote to vote? Shall we just vote, folks? Yeah, okay. All right, so by committee, right? By committee?
Second in Southborough and a second in.
We have moved, and motions have been made, and each of those motions has been seconded by the individual committees. So Northborough gets to start.
Joan?
Did you take your vote?
Are we voting to move the question, or are we voting
No,
for
it
the
wasn't
calendar right
motioned and
now?
seconded by the same committee member, so we're voting on to accept calendar one option as recommended by the superintendent. You vote yes
Thanks for
or no?
clarification. Okay, my answer is yes.
Bryce?
No.
Kristen? Yes. Lauren? Yes. I'm a no, so it passes for Northborough 3-2.
Region.
Jen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
Kathleen Howland?
Yes.
Kathleen Polishko? No. No. And I myself am a no. The motion passes 8-2.
Southborough.
All right, Southborough. Roger? Or I guess I can do all in favor, because we're all in person.
I guess we can do all in favor.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
So it doesn't pass.
Southborough does not pass, so it's 2-2.
Yeah.
It does not pass. So you guys will have to go back and vote in your town.
Yeah.
We have a,
Well, can we do that in our own committee meeting?
we can do that in our committee meeting later tonight.
Not unless we get a fifth member.
Oh, we don't have five, we don't have the fifth person, that's the
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, I mean, it seems so, yeah, because it's really, I think, important to have a full committee vote on this.
I agree.
And that's the problem, is where the, whichever way it goes, I just think to have it be decided without a full committee isn't the right thing to do. Well, you're the chair.
Okay, we'll add that to it.
We move on?
We move on.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What does that actually tease with it? So like, do these votes stand, or do we all as committees have to come back?
Our votes stand.
The individual votes stand. So it's
Yes.
solid.
Yeah, so they can either, on their committee, work on approving it, or they would have their own.
Yeah, by moving on, Matt, I didn't mean move on this, I meant move on to the rest of the agenda.
Just for clarification, it's possible if Southborough does reject the calendar at a later date, that it could be reconsidered by committees. Or is that not the case?
I mean, you can always reconsider.
You can always
a vote.
reconsider.
You can always reconsider a vote up until May.
Yes.
Southborough has to make a vote.
Yeah.
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 And if that decision is no, then we all still have till May 1st.
Correct. Yeah, that's.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, actually. In other words, if Southborough, when the full committee is in attendance and Southborough votes, if Southborough votes no, and with the full committee voting, I'm not sure what that means for the
So what
other
it means is
committees.
that we could end up with 2 calendars.
Could end up with 2 calendars.
Unless
There's a
the
reconsideration.
region or Northborough decided to rescind theirs and revote.
I guess at any given meeting, you can revote something,
Up
right?
until May
That's
1st.
Up until May 1st, okay. Well, hoping for the best, but it is what it is. Okay, moving on, we've got the school committee meeting dates.
So the draft of the 25-26 committee meeting dates, but until a calendar is approved, that's just information, so that will change. Potentially could change.
With the potential change of it, the only thing that I have a question on is for the Northborough School Committee meeting on April 1st, it's Passover. I don't know if that's one of the, like, sundown type thing. So
Yeah,
that-
we should reschedule.
Yeah, we should reschedule that.
Yeah.
So any feedback you have on the
Yeah.
school committee calendar, can you send it my way?
Yeah.
And I'll work with
Yeah,
Cheryl
so-
on adjusting.
So my suggestion would be for the Northborough to move the April 1st to Monday, March 30th. So avoid.
Thank you.
And we're sure that it doesn't start at Sunday, at 30th, not.
I think regardless.
I
we
don't,
should avoid.
it's, as I said, it's not, but it's just, it's on my calendar, so.
Transportation contract?
Transportation contract.
Next.
So as you are aware, you rejected the first transportation bid, the bids from NRT and First Student. We went out to bid and received those bids back. And this evening, we'll present the result and recommendation. So I will turn it over to Becky once I share my screen. It's going to be there. That's the plan.
It's the same one you're casting in our packet, it's the same, no change, okay. So I'll just move the one here.
Do you all have the,
Just very connected back to the annotated block. Yeah, it's on.
yes, so I believe you all have it in your packet, so Becky will just speak to the presentation, and you can follow along in your packet.
Okay, so the second bid for the here we go. All right, so we're pleased to present tonight the second bid that did go out for our school transportation contract. If you want to go to the next slide, Greg. Just to give a little bit of a process, details on the process. Obviously, we did reject the first procurement back in January. The team went back and we updated that first procurement based on feedback that we had received from the committees as well as from vendors and based on that first bid that was submitted. We did issue the invitation for bid on Wednesday, February 5th. We did send out documents to 6 companies, 5 of which were transportation companies, and we received questions from multiple vendors, but only issued 1 addendum compared to the 4 that we had issued in the previous bid round. The bids were received on Wednesday, February 26th. Just like last time, we received 2 bids from the same vendors, NRT and from First Student. And since that time, we have been going through the bid specifications and the results and doing an analysis of what was submitted. Just to point out, two of the key things that are different in this bid, again, based on feedback that we received from other school districts as well as from school bus vendors, is that we did change the specification on the age of the buses, as well as on the substitute. If you remember, we had 4 dedicated spare drivers in the last round. We changed that to be an add alternate to this bid, and so now the second round does have that they're required to have a pool of substitute drivers. So the first proposal, and this is actually the lowest proposal, did come from NRT, our current bus provider. Their proposed daily rate was $508 per day. That is compared to the last bid, which was $544.99 per day. One thing that is different in the previous version, the contract increases were, except for the first year, they were a 3% for subsequent years. Now it does look as though they are looking at 9% of 5.33, and then we fall in with the 3s that they had originally proposed. So over the course of for fiscal year 26, it is a 35.17% increase over fiscal year 25, and that's over all 3 districts. So you can see actually that overall the difference between bid 1 and bid 2 is a difference of about $21,000 over the 3. No, this is actually between bid 1 and bid 2. All right, and then, oh, this is for students. Sorry, I didn't know that you had changed.
The difference between bid 1 and bid 2 for NRT was
213. Thought it was low. So first student, their proposed rate came in at $677.85. They really did not come down much compared to their last bid, which was $681.62, so about a $4 difference per day. And that's where that $21,000 difference from bid 1 to bid 2 came in. They did maintain that 5% increase over the life of the contract. And as you can see, that it is an increase of 80% over fiscal year 2025. Also different in this bid is that while we had them bid as a combined unit for all 3 districts for one contract, we also asked them if they would prefer to bid on each of the individual districts. The thinking is that perhaps we might be able to find a vendor, like a smaller vendor, who may be more interested in bidding on one of the districts, but could not bid on the entire contract. So we did receive bids from NRT only. First student chose not to bid on this option. And as you can see, for Northborough, they did propose $544 per day, which compared to the FY25 contract, it would have been, for Northborough, a $1.6 million contract, which is a difference of $1.2 million over FY25, and it's a $1 million difference from the combined contract.
Do you wish you had a better driver for the slideshow?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
So that represents an increase of 256% over FY25. And then for Southborough, they proposed that same daily rate, which results in a $1.5 million contract, which is a difference of $900,000 from from the combined contract, and $1.1 million from FY25. And what's interesting is, if you go to the next slide, with region, and I think our theory is that this is a 1-tier route versus 2 and 3-tier routes for the other 2 districts. They proposed $520 per day for the region. However, that is still almost a $3 million contract based on those numbers, which is a difference from the combined contract of about $1.3 million, and an increase of $1.7 million from FY25, which would be a 139% increase. So bidding out separately, I think, did not prove to be financially advantageous. We also had add alternates on this, in this bid. The two on the left, the stop arm recording and the electronic student ridership, were also included in the last bid. And obviously, we included the spare driver in this as a new add alternate. One thing that is different with the NRT bid is we suspect that they may have misinterpreted this add alternate the last time, because they bid $500 for the stop arm recording. So we think that that was probably a per day rate versus the overall contract. And so the first student numbers did not change, but the NRT numbers did change from the last contract. And we are actually recommending to the committees that they accept the columns that are highlighted for those two, the stop arm recording and the electronic student record. So in summary, and I have included other numbers in your packet, I have broken out for each of the districts what their costs would be over the next 5 fiscal years. But for the purposes of this presentation tonight, I just want to give an overview of what the contracts would look like for all 3 districts for next fiscal year. So Northborough is looking at a 49.24% increase if we were to include the regular transportation late buses as well as the 2 add alternates. And that would be a just under $200,000 increase. Southborough, it would be a 52.94% increase, or $187,000. And at the region, it would be a 47.51% increase, or $514. And these numbers are included in all of the FY26 budgets that we have presented to the committee. So it is our recommendation that we award the bid to the lowest bidder, NRT, for our regular transportation, our summer programming, as well as our after-school extracurricular and athletics, that we accept those 2 add alternates that I had mentioned, and that we continue to negotiate with NRT on both the base bid as well as the alternates. And we can negotiate with them as long as we are awarding the contract to them prior to signing.
Is that good?
That's good.
Questions or comments? I think everybody's exhausted after the calendar. All right, so the committees will...
Northborough will entertain a motion to award the bid to the lowest bidder for NRT for regular transportation, summer programming, after-school extracurricular activities, except add alternatives for stop arm cameras, electronic student ridership, and to continue for the, that's it.
So moved.
Moved by Bryce, seconded by Kristen. No discussion, we'll do the roll call vote. Joan?
Yes.
Bryce?
Yes.
Kristen? Yes. Lauren? Yes. And myself is a yes, passes unanimously.
I'll make a recommendation to accept the same.
So motion made by Sean, second by Chris. Any discussion? All right, we'll have a roll call vote. Jen?
Yes.
John? Paul?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
Kathleen Howland?
Yes.
Kathleen Pelichko?
Yes.
And I abstain. The motion passes.
For Southborough?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made by Kamala, seconded by Laura. Any discussion?
Yes. Go ahead. My first reaction when I saw the new bids or new quotes from the companies when we got in our packet is just exasperating. It feels, it's not just a feeling, it's just like economically unsustainable. It's who's getting a 40% or 50% increase on anything, right? And so I just want to share that sentiment that the bid, although an improvement over the last one, and we are saying that we're taking the quote-unquote lowest bid, I mean, low is really not the word to be used here. And so for Southborough, as soon as our district moves through the process of decisions on school building or not that we're going to have. I think the next big focus area needs to be around transportation. It's, you know, I think, like, even in approving something tonight, it's almost like, can you approve it as well as send a letter to your legislator that this is actually, how are our public school students and communities that have public school students going to be able to maintain this? It's, I don't understand it. It's just exasperating. So that's my discussion that I wanted to share.
So I have a very similar thought to you, and I am very disappointed that this is what the bids came in at, and that we really have no option other than to go with NRT because it is not fiscally responsible to go with First Student. So something has to change in this space, and I think we need to take the next 3 years to look at what options we have, because this is not sustainable, and this company I've been very disappointed with as a parent and as a school committee member, and I hope that this contract proves me wrong and that they do a much better job than what they've done over the last couple of years.
I don't know if I can make a comment.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's fair point, both fair points. But we are really going to do something. We need to start now.
I agree, yeah,
We cannot
totally agree.
start in a year.
I agree.
Because we're going to run out of time.
We are. It's gonna take us 3 years to do something. I totally agree with you.
Potentially,
Okay.
you don't have time. We got to figure out what we're going to do.
Mhm.
So we have to. And I think
Okay. I mean, if all the committees agree that that's the direction we should go in, then I think we need to put it on.
If one vote, I was going to, I think there's more. I think there was, talking about that planning going forward would be helpful.
Go ahead.
I agree with both of your comments and John's unauthorized comment. That was a descriptive comment.
Was it public comment?
I want to mention, because this is one of the things that, you know, we discussed, and by no means should anyone take this as defending Artis ridiculously, and the other one was even more ridiculously. The contract from before, the previous contract was, what's the term I should use? Maybe a little bit unrealistically low. So
It was very economically favorable.
Yeah, there were some things going on there that would not necessarily have happened, but nonetheless, it doesn't really change. So whether or not this is really a, you know, whatever it is, 40% increase, or it's really only 32 if you take a look at it, still, every you know, all these comments are correct. We need to start now, and we all do. Okay, to start now to think about the next, what's going to happen in 3 years, and hope that we're less disappointed in what happens than we have been. Okay, at least so far.
All right, all in favor? All right, all those. I need, yeah, okay. So that passes 3-1. Yes? Oh,
No.
I'm not sharing this part.
All right.
Sean actually has something to say.
Oh, you have a, yes, sir. I'm sorry. We're still on this topic?
Yes.
Okay.
I think to the point made, there was a lot of discussion in the subcommittee about really taking time over the next 3 years and other steps that need to be, or could be taken. For instance, partnering with other towns, but there's legal, like lobbying on the state level to allow for that. And also looking at the transportation for special ed students in the buses too, because that's another contract
Kelly.
Which Greg might think. I think we were discussing part of hiring a consultant or somebody to figure it out. Is that in our budget for next year? Or no? And how do we get it into the budget or something? Like, that's what I'm just worried, because if it's not in our budget and we do want to do a consult, then it would be another year out, to John's point. And I feel like we do kind of need. I know, that's what.
So just a couple comments. So I agree, the system's broken, the procurement system, the transportation system. We need to continue to advocate at the legislative level so that this changes. So that's one pathway that we need to continue to pursue. And I think there is some momentum. And then secondly, as I look to my left and all of the people who do the work at the central office, we are taxed. Like we are stretched thin. So I do think that if this is a commitment of the school committee, which I agree with, we need to have funding to be able to hire a consultant to be able to do this extensive work to prepare us for potentially getting into the transportation sector.
Do we know how much it would be?
No, we can look at what that would be.
And so, okay, but it
So year-
would be on next year's budget?
No, so year one could be, let's.
A working group or something? Let's add some more to your, let's add more to
Yes, a
your.
working group. Year one could be, let's go out and look at the consultants that are available, and how much in preparation for year two, getting that consultant on board to really start in earnest exploring this.
And Kelly, there's a bunch of our peers in the part of the MASC that are more than willing to talk to us about.
Yeah, and well, I know like Marlboro, for example, like they were like, if you guys make your own transportation company, like, we'll be on with you type thing, but it's against the law to do that right now, as it's written.
Okay.
So
That part true, but I was saying that there are many other districts within our MASC cohort that would talk to us, share
Yes.
what were the things, steps, and
Yes,
the,
yes,
know,
yes.
process that they went through in order to make the decision, yes or no. So, yeah, but the part you're talking about, yes, we should not be doing that.
Yeah.
I think, is there any possibility of cost sharing with other districts to hire a consultant to replicate that across other districts? And then,
Do you know?
maybe two, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, we could look at that.
Yeah.
And just thinking as the year is closing out and whether sometimes we have the ability and sometimes we don't with excess and deficiency at the end of the year, like thinking about that towards, how quickly you can find out the cost for a consultant is just one thing to consider.
Well, I'm suspecting that with budgets the way they are this year, that could be tough.
Yes. Just looking for options.
This year.
What I heard you just say was, students do not pay tax, and they don't have any capacity to do anything. And so we should be, the committees should be, I hope they will heard that. So if we ask for these extra things, I don't necessarily know that they're going to do it. And I think that's what I heard you say.
Not without a consultant who can take the majority of this work on and.
We all need to, everyone has that we're not going to do
Yeah.
I want to be aware of it.
Yeah, nothing can happen with the transportation thing.
I just heard you say, if we would do this, I don't think we can. I don't think there's capacity, and we can't build capacity. I don't do that capacity.
I think part of it was like a budget question, right? Is it maybe at the end of the year you could find some funds to fund a consultant, okay? And that maybe that stands alone. I'm just making an editorial comment that, at least in Southborough, okay, I mean, budgets are it's gonna be tough to squeeze anything else,
I
you know.
understand that. Well, that our problem is we don't start now, because we can't. And we start in a year's time, we're probably going to be doing up again another, and oh, by the way, NRT, remember, is out there in 3 years. A 1-year contract, because we need more time, is probably going to be almost as much as a 3-year contract.
Well, no, we have 2-year options. We have two
Yes,
1
of
years to extend our
Right,
two-year
so
contract.
then we have 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We have 5 years, but we just get our heads around the fact that we're going to have this, we just voted in something that's going to be there for a while. Okay, that's fine. Because I'm less concerned if we have 5
I think we're gonna, just thinking of the future, we're gonna have to, we're gonna be forced into the transportation sector because of budgeting. We are not going to be able to sustain the costs of transportation when, if we take it on, you know, it could be, you know, 1/3 less of what we're expending now. So I think it's going to be quality of service issue and also a financial, you know, cost savings that we're going to have to take on. But I think we can look into a consultant for the end of the year funds if we have any, and if not, have a conversation around the FY27 budget, making sure that's in the budget for a consultant.
Okay, policy development.
Yes,
and
so in your packet are policies for first readings, and I just want to thank the policy subcommittee for taking on these policies. It was approached a little bit differently this time, where we had representatives from each of the subcommittees focused on certain policies. So in your packet is the revision to the bullying prevention and intervention policy, the civil rights non-discrimination policy, and the Title IX sexual harassment policy. So I believe those policies were developed by Heather led that committee, and who was on the subcommittee, Kristen and Kamali. So the changes are redlined in your packet. They were reviewed by legal counsel as well, and we also incorporated the CIC's recommendations from its report at the end of the last school year. Animals on school premises was also revisited, and changes were made. So that was Kristen and Laura. The religious observance policy was Sean O'Shea, Lauren, and me, and we made some modifications in the last policy. The international out-of-country field trips policy is a new policy, and that is the region only. So I'll turn it back to Roger to think about, do we want to discuss these policies in depth, or do we want to email feedback and have the committees reconvene, discuss the feedback?
Yes.
I would recommend us doing it individually. I know Southborough has a meeting after this for just time purposes versus like discussing it all extensively right now.
By individually, you're recommending that we email anything?
Yeah. You could, whoever the liaison on your committee, like Southborough, the region, then, you know.
Yeah. If there are no objections, then let's go the email route. Give you a chance to take a look at it, maybe if you haven't yet, email comments in.
We have a deadline for that, just so that the policy subcommittee can.
Yeah, I think you guys should tell us.
Okay.
You guys can tell your committee, so who's ever on the policy committee, you guys tell us.
So if we can get feedback by May 1st. The next combined meeting is in June, so that's when these will be brought forth for a second reading.
Good.
Can I comment?
Please.
So I was part of the two committees, and one that I just want to ask that when you're reviewing it in your email, the civil rights non-discrimination policy, A180, That was one that, Jen, myself, Heather, as well as just kind of reviewing it, comparing, contrasting against other policies that are out there in other districts, universities, lawyers. That was one that, and what last year when I was the chair, I commented publicly multiple times, really needed to be revised in order for us to have a better reaction to some of one of the heinous situations that happened last year in our school district in Southborough. And so I just, I think that the changes that we implemented would really help us to have a better reaction, as well as actual written perceived policy on how to proceed. And so I want to really highly recommend that it be approved. If there are just some sort of small suggestions on changes for wording, etc., fine, but I feel like we worked really hard in making sure that it improves upon what previously existed, takes into effect what the recommendations were from the consultants. Remember they came? So in case this gets voted and reviewed on when I'm not at that meeting, I just want to give my input tonight that I believe that's quite strong where it is. That was number 8180.
Well, let me ask you a question. If people had a chance to look at that, would anybody object to voting on that tonight?
So technically, it's a first read.
It's a first read, so we really
So-
can't, because it's got to go back, okay. All right.
I mean, the committee could vote the policy, but I would recommend it going to a second read and giving people time to.
Yeah, if you want to add more bite to it, feel free, but
Okay.
I just wanted to
Well, I know that,
give you my.
yeah, and I think you're right, it needs to go to a second read. I mean, the longer we go without a policy, the longer we go without a policy. I mean, that's, I hear that loud and clear also. Okay. So then, email in comments on policies, and we'll move to the minutes. Is that where we are?
Personnel update.
Personnel update, I'm sorry, thank you.
Just one change, Juliana Silva is now the admin assistant to Student Support Services. So she was a admin assistant to an assistant principal and decided that she wanted to move up to central office because it's such a great place to work. So she has joined our team. So it's been nice having Juliana at central office.
Action on the minutes. So, you have to do this by committee. Northborough?
Northborough will entertain a motion to accept the open, or combined open meeting minutes of December 4th. Just one.
So
Want
moved.
to do it together?
Is there, well, I was just seeing the dates, I was just saying, there's a date on December 4th and the joint special open meeting minutes on January 13th.
So moved.
So Joan moved, and Kristen seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Joan?
Yes.
Bryce?
Yes.
Kristen? Yes. Lauren? Yes. Myself is a yes. Northborough passes.
The regional will entertain this, I'm sorry, stop first.
Or is that only?
No, that's fine, we can do the region next. Can I entertain the same motion from the region? Moved by John, second by Paul. Any discussion? All right, we'll have a roll call vote. Jen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
Kathleen Howland?
Yes.
Kathleen Felichko?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Southborough?
Same motion? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Okay, motion made by Kamali, seconded by Laura. All in favor? Laura, thank you.
I make a motion for the union.
So moved.
Okay, well, so the motion was made by Kelly,
And then.
Oh, sorry.
seconded by,
Did I second?
okay, seconded by Chelsea.
All right, sorry, I think I screwed that up.
And I think we have 5 people here, right? So, roll call vote, Chelsea?
Aye.
Lauren? Joan?
Yes,
Kelly?
Yes.
I vote yes. So that passes. And that's it for the minutes. We're on to communications.
Yes, so in your packet is the FY24 annual report, the FY24 audit report, and the FY24 board letter. So I sit on the board and represent Northborough, Southborough, and the region. So I did approve these as a board member, but just for your information, I included these in your packet.
Are we almost done? We're down to public comment. Dave, anything to? Okay, so seeing no public comment.
Northborough, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Can I keep going? Okay. Roll call vote, Joan?
yes.
Bryce? Yes. Kristen? Yes. Lauren? Yes. Myself is a yes. Northborough's adjourned at 7:29.
The region will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Jen, second by John. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Jen?
Yes.
John? Paul? Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Joan?
Joan?
Yes, yes.
Kathleen Howland?
Kathleen Howland? Yeah, she's waving an affirmative.
Okay, Kathleen Polechko? Yes. All right, motion, and I am a yes. The region is adjourned at 7:29.
Is there a motion to adjourn Southborough?
To adjourn.
You want me to stay?
Well,
Oh, you want me to recess?
well, let me ask you a question. So we're going into an executive session, or not? Or am I looking at the wrong?
Well, we're gonna talk about the community hearing.
So we.
I'll recess. Okay,
Southborough.
Southborough's gonna recess at 7:29. Is there a second? Thanks. All in favor?
Okay, motion from the union to adjourn. Anybody?
So, motion.
Kelly, seconded by
Second.
Chelsea. Roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Kelly?
Yes.
Lauren? Joan?
You already popped off?
So she adjourned.
She's adjourned.
Okay, and I vote yes. So that is 4-0, I guess. Is that what it is? And thank you very much.
Good night, Kathleen.
For those of you that get to leave. Glad we